So, first things first, and this is just me ranting because I'm angry and I've been angry about this for most of the day. But Shannon happened to find yet another person like saying she deserves to die because she doesn't like Epic the musical.
There's no such thing as evil people. Just ordinary people who do bad things because they're unhappy. Jump. What? Jump.
This person posted right before the new year, so it's still relatively recent. And with that, like, there's just part of me that I can't even fucking believe, like, I can't believe that people got that serious, number one, that we still have to talk about it, like, over a month later, number two. And number three, like, this one in particular, like, I tried to have pulled down, I reported it, nothing happened. And when it's like that bad, I just have to wonder what next. And so I tagged Jorge in that person's video. I also started writing on like his in his comments. I sent him a message on Instagram because I'm just like, I don't fucking know what these people want at this point. Like, what the hell do we have to do? Because we stopped talking about this like a month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you don't actually know me and her outside of like the videos that we make, you might be surprised by the fact that Mandy is just as protective of me as I am of her and other people. It just comes out differently. And this is a way that it like comes out, but actually someone who was really nice and left like a nice comment when we first posted the video about all of the epic stuff, they posted about that video that I saw, and I think that I saw it, but like I didn't watch the entire thing. And every other video I've seen of that trend is somebody like, you know, joking, or it's like somebody talking about like fashion. And it's like, oh, there's every kind of fashion that I like, and then they put like words on the screen of what they're talking about. The thing that is so absolutely wild about that, besides the obvious, that somebody made a video telling me to take myself off of planet Earth because of my opinion about a musical that does not matter that much, because nothing could matter that much to have that like be a response. But there's like, so that video has like 130,000 views, 36,000 people liked that video. So almost a baseball stadium full of people think that I should be dead because of what I thought about Epic the musical. And I scrolled through like hundreds of comments and did not find one that was like, are you saying that this person should unalive themselves? Like, isn't that a little bit too far? Instead, all of the comments were basically either arguing about what I was saying about the Odyssey, whether it was true or not, or were just like saying the same regurgitated shit everyone was saying back when that video was posted. And it's just like absolutely a wild thing to see people post a video like that and hundreds of thousands of people to see it, and nobody sat there and was like, I don't think you should post that. Like, there was a comment in there that was like, oh, our fandom was so nice and this is what ruined it. I was like, I am what ruined your fandom? Like, me? Like, if the whole thing about this whole situation, that of why I never deleted any of the videos that we made or anything like that, is that I am an adult. I am 40 years old. I have gone through 6 years, almost 7 years now, basically 7 years. It'll be like pretty much right now when I started therapy 7 years ago. Actually, that's weird. But it was like February 2nd in like 2018 when I went to therapy. So I've done 7 years of therapy. I no longer want to die. I used to all the time. I don't want to do that anymore. I've done a lot of work to make sure that I don't want to do that anymore. But I am an adult and I've done a lot of that shit, so I figured that out. And so when I see a video like that, yeah, it makes me really sad and it makes me cry. And it's really upsetting because I don't know how perfect strangers who don't even know me could think that sort of thing about me. It's just scary. But I'm otherwise okay because I have people like her and other people like that I can talk to about this sort of thing. Not everybody is in a place like that. What about a teenager? Like, if you guys are talking to me this way and you've never seen me before, you've never seen a video of me before, this is the first time you've ever seen me. And because you saw one video of me where I said something you didn't like, you think that I should die. What are you going to say to people that are younger than you that you might interact with? Like, that's scary to think, like, what people could be saying in a fandom like this. And I kept those videos up just for the fact that if anybody else ever deals with something like this, I want there to be something to show that it's happened before. Yeah. That it's not just them, that it's not that they're coming after them personally, it's just that this is how they are. And to just show that they're not the only person that has that opinion, because there really is no videos out there negatively saying anything about this thing because of the amount of harassment you get when you do that. And like, all I did was critique it. It's not okay or right or something you should ever expect. Like, I should never be just like scrolling my For You page on a Sunday and see a video of almost 40,000 people saying that I should go die.
Yeah.
For any reason. That is not something that anyone should ever expect to experience. And especially because the person who posted that, like, that video is still getting views. So it's not like they like don't know that it's there anymore. And it's just like, it's there. It's happening. And they're just like okay with saying something like that. And even if they're 20 years old, like, you're old enough to know that you shouldn't be saying things like that to people because you don't know how somebody will respond to that. You have no idea. Like, I'm glad that that happened now and not 5 years ago, because if it would have happened 5 years ago, I would have actually thought about doing it. And now I'm not going to think like that anymore. But you just don't know, especially when the only interaction you have with a person is watching one video they make about something that you like, that they have critiques of. You just don't know. And it's absolutely wild that fandom is that out of control. And that, like, we said this before, but I'm just going to repeat it again. The thing that makes us not like Jorge the most is you guys. Mm-hmm. It's you guys. I never want to hear. The Odyssey used to be one of my favorite stories, and like, Odysseus was in these chapters of the Song of Achilles, and I wanted him to go away. I was like, I don't even like you anymore, because the only thing I think of now is this situation. I'm like, used to be one of my favorite characters, used to be part of one of my favorite stories or myths or whatever you want to call it. And now I don't want anything to do with you because of it. Only everything he says reminds me of something that, like, epic people would say or did say or would say. Every time epic people would be like, oh, you should be mad at Homer because it's an adaptation, or you just watched too much Percy Jackson or whatever, and that's why you don't like it. It's like, you fundamentally do not even understand why these scenes are happening. So why should I listen to your critique of it or take anything that you say that seriously? Yeah. It's just like, you're telling somebody that they should end their life because of the analysis they had about a thing that you enjoy, and you don't even understand it enough to understand what I'm even trying to say.
I have to
this thing has happened with Greek mythology where it's like, people know that there's a lot of like depraved things, like, you know, sexual essay and R-word stuff and other stuff that's messed up, that people feel like because there is that in a lot of the stories, that they don't have to act like a nice person, that they can just say whatever they want, they can trauma porn things out as much as they want, and they don't have to like care about how they affect people, because it's like, oh, this is Greek mythology, so you can just do whatever you want. Percy Jackson is my most loved thing because it doesn't treat their audience like that. Mm-hmm. Like, they actually have respect for their audience, and they don't make them go through that. They can tell the exact same themes and myths and ideas as they do with the actual myths without making you go through the horrific, like, traumatic details, because you don't need to know those things in order to understand, like, the story behind these myths and understand why people like telling these stories for thousands of years. You don't need to know that. And so, like, it's a weird thing to say, like, oh, Percy Jackson has ruined Greek mythology, and I'm like, do you mean that it showed that you can use morals and ethics and take care of like trauma survivors and things like that while making content that is inherently also including a lot of trauma without having to just exploit that trauma endlessly? Because I'm not sure why that is a bad thing, that you actually like respect your audience instead of just, you know, going into all these super traumatic things because you feel like you can.
Yeah.
But the other thing we wanted, the whole thing with like the Odyssey is like what I was just saying about not understanding adaptations, is that people don't understand what happened in the original Odyssey enough to even understand what we are trying to say about why we don't like it. And so essentially, the end of the Odyssey, where that song would be, the whole thing with like the R word stuff is extremely different. And just to like try to explain that, in the actual Odyssey, what is going on is that the handmaidens or slaves that Penelope and Odysseus have, like in Epic, they never even talk about that they even have slaves, which is understandable because that wouldn't make you like them very much, because having them is now obviously not something that you should do. And back then, it was not seen the same way. But still, in the original story, they have handmaidens or slaves, and Penelope tells the handmaidens to like keep an eye on the suitors when the entire time that they're there, which means that when the suitors want to have sex with them, they have to have sex with them, because they can't exactly tell them no, because then they would have to tell them that they're only there to watch them for Penelope, and they can't do that.
It's not only that. It's Penelope knows these people are disrespecting her. They're disrespecting Odysseus by how they're treating his house. And she's still going about business as usual, which is let's take care of these guests because that's the culture. But she's doing that knowing that these people aren't going to respect her enough to treat her servants in any sort of way that is above water. So like, even though it's not exactly frowned upon to sleep with the help back then, like they're probably not going to do it. Like they're going to be even worse about it. Like, I'll just put it that way without getting too graphic.
Yeah, like they're not like people that would like respect that or anything like that. She had to know that that's the kind of stuff that they might do, and she was using her handmaidens or slaves as a way to like protect her from experiencing that herself, which is understandable maybe, but also that is a difficult thing to think about when you think about what those characters went through. And so in the original Odyssey, the handmaidens that are going through that for a long time, towards the end of the story, they get tired of being put in this very difficult position. And so they start like talking to the suitors to get them to go after Penelope, because they're like, I've been doing all of this, protecting her basically for all this time, and she's not helping us. At a certain point, you just can't handle that anymore. But they never actually get anywhere, like because Odysseus comes home and he kills them all because they try to kill his son, and then Odysseus finds out that the handmaidens were not loyal to Penelope when he was gone, and he kills all of them. And the reason why he thinks they are not loyal is because they slept with the suitors. The reason why they slept with the suitors is because they had to. They had no other choice. It's not like they could say no in that sort of situation. They don't have a way to say no. They would get in even more trouble if they would have said no, because then the whole thing would have blown up, and who knows what would have happened after that. And so it is, a really messed up thing that in this story, Odysseus kills all of them because he sees them as being disloyal to his wife because they slept with the suitors.
That's not the only reason he sees them as disloyal, though. They were actively plotting against the household. So,
yes.
And
it's one of those things. Like for me, when I'm reading that, I'm like, they're plotting against it because of a being in that position. And so it always feels, and like I found a lot of peer-reviewed articles when all of this stuff was going on, talking about like people who got PhDs in this sort of thing, talking about how it's morally okay for Odysseus to kill all the suitors because they're rapists. But they could never come up with an excuse or to explain away him hurting like the handmaidens because they were they were, you know, horrible like victims in this sort of situation.
Yeah.
And so like when that is the original context of the story, that the handmaidens are being put in this horrible position, and that's the reason why they start like trying to plot with the suitors to go after Penelope after many years of dealing with that. But then it never happens because he comes home instead, and then they end up getting killed by him. Mm-hmm. When you take the handmaidens completely out of that story and instead just keep the song the same, but not have any of the actual story about why that ever happened, and you just are like, oh, well, in the original Odyssey, they did try to plot to kill Penelope, so it's fine for him to include it in this adaptation. It's like, that's literally like Homer should go back in time and start the Odyssey on fire. If that is the way that you're going to like reading comprehension this thing, that it's a tragic thing in my mind. It's a very tragic thing of the Odyssey that Odysseus comes home and kills those women when they were the ones protecting his wife most of the time when he was gone, even though they didn't want to. And so he killed the people that were protecting her the most because he didn't understand what was actually going on and didn't take the time to actually figure it out. He just wanted to, like, in a rage, do that. Fine, do that. But it's like, that is like a very sad, like, tragic thing that they were ever, like, pushed to that point where they were, like, willing to work with the people hurting them that way in order for it to stop, because it was the only thing they could do to make it stop because it had been going on for so long. And so for you to like take that and just literally whittle it down to a like extremely over exaggerated like cartoon level villain just like being villainous because villainy and that's the only reason why you're doing it, and you take out all of the actual meaning behind that being included in the original story, yeah, that's why we don't like it. Mm-hmm. And like you can say a million times that I don't know anything about the Odyssey, but that doesn't make it true.
Like, an adaptation can make certain parts of a story that are not very enjoyable better, and Jorge successfully did that with one part. I gave him all of the praise for that, and that was the Astyanax part. I've never liked that part of Odysseus's lore, is that he played a hand in Astyanax, who is Hector's son, getting murdered as a toddler. I've never liked that part of his story. And I love what Jorge did with that. I loved him going through the indecision and him, like, you know, I even like that he added that it was a god that told him, like, Zeus doesn't necessarily make sense to me, but, like, yeah, I do like that he got this divine order, was like, hey, if you don't do this, this kid's going to come back to haunt you. And he had to really grapple with that. Mm-hmm. That was a great rewrite. But when you take out the thing with the handmaids, you take out the thing with Circe and Calypso as well, because that's the part that everybody seems to think that we forgot about. We did not forget about that. No. So taking every other sexual assault out for whatever reason, or downplaying it to the extreme, to the point where it does not seem like Calypso and him had a thing, like they may not have had physical love in that way. And Circe, he straight up denies her. So we have that, but you ramp up what was happening at home. And I know people have criticized me for this. I will own my classicist bullshit. Like, I am coming at this with a lens of ancient, you know, eyes of like, yeah, it wouldn't have been seen as that bad for them to do what they did with the handmaids. For them to do it with Penelope would have been way worse. It would have been, like, socially way worse back then. So that, to me, was ramping the story up. And I know that that is not a modern lens, because it's way worse that they did something to a bunch of women in the house, not just one woman. But at the same time, just based off of social rules back then, you know, like, that is ramping the problem up. And I will maintain this. The stupid Epic fans yelled at me so much for saying this. The only reason Jorge had to do this was because his Odysseus was a monster.
Yeah. Like Odysseus is the monster in the epic version of the Odyssey. That's why I don't enjoy it. I don't like um the whole thing with the Odyssey that I enjoyed when I read it when I was a kid, and I always enjoyed it since then, is that Odysseus is a good person that's being forced to do things he would normally never ever do because he's in these situations where he has to, because if he doesn't, he's going to die and he doesn't want to die. That is any trauma survivor ever, especially like a child abuse survivor, knows exactly what that feels like. And so I always really liked that battle that he has of like having to balance doing things that he normally would never do without completely losing who he is as a person. And so that's why I didn't like the epic version of him, is because I feel like it went way too far on like the I don't want to call it like the negative side, but like the more villainous like side. And there wasn't as much of like that balance of him wanting to be a good person. It was more like, let's murder everybody and then cry about how I'm doing it because I want to see my wife one day. And it's like that is not at all, like, that is a very poor way if you're trying to like depict the back and forth and like the struggle and all that kind of stuff that Odysseus is doing in the original Odyssey. That is not a well written way to depict that, because it's missing all of the emotional depth. And it's not hard to include that. There are little things, little tiny things that you could change in a lot of these songs that would like make that more like obvious, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, I don't know, like when the whole Scylla thing happens, for him to not know that he has to like sacrifice all of his men, or that he tells the men beforehand, this monster is going to attack us. We either have to sacrifice 6 of us, or we're all going to die. And then it becomes like a thing of he's now including his men in this horrible decision, and then you can see how the men would respond if they would like try to pick people to die, or if some of them would choose to die. And it becomes a much more interesting thing, and it's not him literally picking individually each person to die and then using like a fantasy whatever version of his wife as like the example. Like, it's horrifying in that song that he picks out these men that he is good friends with to die. Literally the exact same things that Luke does in Percy Jackson. He is the villain in Percy Jackson, and that is the stuff that he does. He literally goes after his friends and tries, like, people he knows well, to kill them. It's the exact same decisions they are making, and it's horrifying that at the end of that song he's sitting there crying and being like, I have to do this because I have to get home to Penelope. And it's like, I don't think Penelope would want you to do this. And like, that's you should never get home to your wife and your son if this is the kind of stuff you're doing, because this is like actively dangerous. And so like, that is a very different feeling than if you just change those little things in the story to make it different. And like, if you want it to be a story of Odysseus just being a full-on villain, okay. I know that people like stories like that for some reason. I know that a lot of people like stories of heroes becoming the full-on villains. I am aware. I see the fan fiction about it. And every fandom that I'm in, I don't like that at all. And so I don't want to read that, but I understand that there are people who do enjoy that. But I don't. And if I'm going to post a video about it, I should do that without people advocating for me to kill myself.
Yes.
Like that, I can't believe that's a sentence I just said. But
Yeah,
it's what I did.
you know, we don't talk about our scapegoat golden child dynamic as much on this podcast as we can. But yeah, the me wanting to go Karen and like, I'm gonna fucking tell Jorge. That is 100% golden child. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go straight to the parents. I'm telling dad.
like stop with this like back and forth, or like you just like dealing with it or trying to find a way to like make it go away. You're like, no, I'm skipping all of those steps. I'm just going to like the highest authority, and I'm just going to try to get them to do something by being like as in their face about it as humanly possible. Well, I like try to go directly to the people to try to get them to stop. That's like those two roles down to like a T. The thing that is so hard about the videos like that, where they're saying that I should die or just talking so negatively about me, is that every single person that's making videos about me, they know that I am a CSA survivor. They know that because I put that in the video and on my account that I was.
Mm-hmm.
So they all know that, and they're all still telling me you should go die. And it's like, did you think that I never wanted to do that? You know that I am that I went through that when I was a kid. You, even if you don't know how much it was and how horrific and disgusting and like torturous my dad actually was, you at least know bare bones that, and you're still out there saying things and talking to me that way. And it's like, if you can know that about a person and it doesn't like stop you from being like overly cruel to them just because they said something online that you don't like, because it's like, well, life has been like pretty mean to them already. I don't need to make it worse because they've already been through enough shit. I don't need to be mean to them because life has been mean to them. That's the way that I think about that stuff. It's like there's no point in me making it worse, but they did it anyway.
Yeah.
They like all like banded together and enjoyed doing it. And I don't know what that, I just don't know what that could possibly ever mean. And it's hard with life right now um, that a literal rapist is president. And it's hard to watch people disregard things like that so easily when he's like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't want that sort of thinking to become prevalent again. To not care about people and not care what you're putting them through because you just need to be tougher and things like that. Like, I don't want that sort of thinking to come back. And he's that person that brings that sort of thinking out. Like, you're already acting that way before he was ever even in office. Can you please stop?